Okay.
Hello, family. I am Tina Johnson. I am the Vice President and historian of the Johnson Robinson Hall Family Reunion. This is the first time since 1984 that we have not had our biennial family reunion. While I'm certainly going to miss seeing all your beautiful faces, the Family Reunion Committee decided we would have a virtual family reunion instead. So we will honor the elders in our families by posting interviews of our family elders conducted by their grandchildren. We will celebrate our family with a virtual family banquet, and we will honor our ancestors by examining our family roots, or the roots of our family tree. Our family tree begins right here with my maternal grandparents, James Andrew Robinson Sr. and Hattie Johnson Robinson. Our family tree represents both sides of my grandparents' family. Let's begin with the Johnson side of the family tree, my grandmother's family. As African Americans, slavery has been a defining period in our history. We as a family can trace our family roots back to the last family member who was born in slavery. On the Johnson side of the family, this would be Lindsey Johnson, born in 1847. He was my grandmother's grandfather. And his wife, my grandmother's grandmother, was Adeline White Johnson. And they had 10 children. Garfield Papa Johnson, who was my grandmother's father, was the oldest. There was Frank, John Henry, Washington, Joseph, Hattie Johnson Walker, Marie, Etta, Mary, and Sarah. Garfield, better known as Papa, married Polly, and they had 4 children. My grandmother Hattie was the oldest of the 4 children. The second was Mary Johnson Frazier. The third and only son was John Lindsey Johnson, better known as Bud. And the baby of the family was Adeline Johnson Dean. Now, my grandmother Hattie married my grandfather James, and they had 15 children. Aunt Mary married Lumpkin Frazier, and they had 3 children. Bud had 3 children, and Aunt Adeline married Anderson Dean and had 8 children. The Lord called Hattie home in 1995. Mary was called home in 1979. Bud was called home in 1975. And Aunt Adeline went home to be with the Lord in 1999. And that's the roots of the Johnson part of the tree. Now the Robinson roots are my grandfather's family. And my grandfather's grandfather was Freeman Robinson. He was born in 1849. He was married to Vinnie Robinson, who was born in 1854. And they had 4 children: Willie Robinson, Annie Robinson Frazier, James Robinson, and Carrie Robinson. Now, Willie Robinson was my grandfather's father, and he was born in 1862, 3 years before the end of slavery. He married Elizabeth Hawkins McGee Robinson, who was born in 1883, and they had 5 kids. Annie McGee Robinson was the oldest. The second was James Andrew Robinson Sr., born in 1909. That's my granddad. Born in 1907. Richard Robinson Sr., born in 1909, was number 3. And the twins, David and Daisy, were born in 1911. And David died as an infant. Annie McGee Robinson, better known as Annie, never had any children. And she died in Montgomery. She lived in Cleveland for several years and moved back to Montgomery when she retired. James married Hattie Robinson, and they had 15 children. And Granddad died in 1971. Richard Sr. married Doris Robinson, and Aunt Doris just went home to be with the Lord last month at the ripe old age of 92. Richard and Doris had 8 children, and Uncle Richard went home to be with the Lord in 1966. Daisy Robinson married John Thomas, and they had 3 children. And Aunt Daisy went home to be with the Lord in 1984. Now, the Hall side of the family is also on my grandfather's side, but these are his mother's people. My grandfather's mother name was Elizabeth Hawkins Elizabeth Hawkins McGee Robinson. Her grandfather's name was Prince Hall, and we do not have a birth date for him, a year of his birth. He was married to Elizabeth Hall, and they had 7 children. Martha Hall Hawkins Brooks, which was my grandfather's mother's mother. Mary Hall, Elizabeth Hall, Peter Hall, Tom Hall, Richard Hall, and Katie Hall Flowers. Now, recent events in our nation have brought the problems of racial injustice and racial inequality to the forefront. However, as African Americans, these issues have always been to the forefront for us. Black Lives Matter is just not a slogan, it's a lifestyle. Our foreparents lived and survived and thrived in a time when racial hostilities were at its worst. The fact that we, their descendants, are alive, well, and thriving should be a source of pride for all of us. I know our ancestors are shouting in heaven over the fact that their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and so on, are still in relationship and communication with one another. Many scholars outside of our community like to define the Black family as broken and dysfunctional. But look around, family. That's not true. When I think about all the stories my mother told me and grandma and my aunts and uncles, I know it was our family's faith in God and the love of family that brought us and kept us. And to our younger generation of Robinson Johnson Halls, just know it is the legacy of this faith and family that will continue to see you through too. Thank you, my family. And in case you're wondering where I fit in on this family tree, I am the second oldest daughter and the second oldest child of Helen Robinson Johnson, the second oldest daughter and the second oldest child of James and Hattie. I love you, my family. Bye-bye.